the disease is spreading here. Now to humans with boils, sixth plague, boils, sores on the skin. The boils breaking out in sores were probably skin anthrax passed on by the bites of the carrier flies. And so you can see the pattern going on here. Now, the boils may have affected particularly the hands and the feet, because in Exodus 9:11 it says the magicians could not stand before Moses. Their feet were infected and they couldn't stand before him, literally. So, now, this is, this plague would not necessarily have anything to do with the other plagues, but God sent a plague of hail, heavy hail, with thunder, lightning, and rain in Exodus 9:13 through 35. This ruined the barley and the flax, but not the wheat and the spelt, which were not yet grown. So we still have, some of you have been on the internet, see how the biggest recorded, what would you say it, hailstones? They're as big as snowballs. Okay, people have been hit in the head and killed by these things. So they are that kind of size. That's what it happens today. It happened back then. And God orchestrated where it was going to happen. This would fit early February. The concentration of this season of a sudden plague in Upper Egypt, but not in Goshen near the Mediterranean seacoast, fits the climatic phenomena of these areas. We're going to look at where Goshen is and why the weather would be a little bit different there in a little bit. We'll show you a map of that. Okay. Now, the conditions are set for a plague of locusts. Certain types of weather make their multiplication and infestation more likely. And that's what the authors say here. But that the plague came, and Moses knew it was going to come because God showed it to him, and in came the locusts. The heavy precipitation in Ethiopia and the Sudan, which would have led to the flooding of the Nile, which led to the extraordinary high Nile, would also provide favorable conditions for a dense plague of locusts by about March. So this thing fits the seasons they're going through here, actually. Let's see if we're going to do anything else here. Ninth plague, the thick darkness. What we would call, and what they're saying here, is they believe it was a sandstorm. So thick that you could not see. Do such things happen? Yes, they do. Do they cross Africa? Yes, they do, in the Middle East. So this one came, the thick darkness, which could be felt. Now, the felt is the dust that you feel. That's what they're saying here. This was the term for it, I'm not even sure how to pronounce it, Kashin, dust storm, but not an ordinary one. The heavy inundation had brought down and deposited masses of red earth, now dried out as a fine dust over the land. All right. The effect of this, when whirled up by a Kashim wind, would be to make the air extraordinarily thick and dark, blotting out the light of the sun. So the 3 days it was known the length of this Kashim. The intensity of the Kashim may suggest that it was early in the season and would thus come in March. If the Israelis were dwelling in the region of Wadi Tumulat, they would miss the worst effects of this plague because they were near the sea. Okay, it's not mentioned. That's going. The last plague. Obviously, the last plague is supernatural. It's not a cause-effect thing. It's the angel of death executing divine judgment here. But of course, for some of us who've just taken the book of Revelation, some of those disasters look like natural disasters, and some of them look like supernatural disasters. And that's what we see here too. The 10th plague is picking out which people are going to die, is the finger of God. And it was important to do it this way. He's saying, listen, you took Hebrews boys, and now your first son are going to die. It was a finger of God with a specific judgment for specific sin. But it was a revelation of who was in control. It wasn't just a bad year they were having. God was executing his justice and his judgment upon them. And this was the sin. Pharaoh would see his son dead. And then they would let the people go. At this point, the Egyptians, all of them, knew who was was God and who was behind this and who should be worshipped. So that some of them, known as the rabble or the mixed multitude, would literally flee Egypt with Moses because they were converts. They were shaken from their faith in these false gods. Now, let me give you a list of them here. Some of them you can see which plagues they correlate with. Some of them I know. Oh, I want to give you some reasons here. Why Egyptians hated the Hebrews. There's some reasoning behind here. Okay. Number one, they were shepherds. When you look at Egyptian history, they were invaded by nomadic shepherds who ruled history for 240 years. And then they were finally conquered. But they brutally mistreated the Egyptians. So that long before the Hebrews came in, who were keepers of sheep and cattle, shepherds to the Egyptians meant one of the wild, lawless marauders who would at times attack and steal and rob. They were distrust, not just Hebrews, any shepherds. So if you will, if you were a nomadic shepherd, you were considered to be distrustful and murderous. So they had a definite prejudice to begin with against shepherds. Then, secondly, and this is probably even more important, the Hebrews sacrificed the very animals that the Egyptians worshipped. Yes, you're sacrificing our what? Our gods. They worshipped the ox, or as you would call it, the bull. In their temple, they would take a bull, a live bull. They believed that his breath had healing powers. And they would determine prophecy by different movements of the bull. So there would be windows in the temple where you could look in and see the bull and watch its movements. They worshiped this animal. They worshiped him for his power, his strength, his virility. And Pharaoh himself was identified with this bull. So they worshiped the bull or the ox. And so in one of those plagues, the cattle in the field all die. And when the firstborn die, again, the firstborn of the cattle die. So how about this ox that they worship? God squashed them. Okay? He's literally stomping on their gods. Secondly, we mentioned it already here, they worship the cobra. And when Moses' serpent eats their serpents, their cobra, their snake god, is put to shame. Third, they actually worshipped the Nile. First plague, the Nile becomes undrinkable, stinks. Their river god is a bloody mess. God has stomped that god. Then also, I think I'm trying to get them all here, the ones I know of. Yes. They worshipped Pharaoh as a god. And when they crossed the Red Sea, Pharaoh was drowned. Now, by the way, I don't know the name of them. They actually had a god that had a frog's head. So the plague of frogs would identify with one of their gods. So I'll put frogs here. I mean, the emblem for one of their gods is actually a frog. Dead frogs, dead Pharaoh, dead river, dead cobra, dead cattle, and dead ox. Stop, 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 stop. This is what he's doing. Some of them it's a little hard to identify, but there's 6 different gods of Egypt. Oh, there's a 7. My memory's getting going on here. They worshipped the sun. And they actually believed that the sun, when it set at night, was some kind of demon pulled it into the underworld, and it had to be rescued and resurrected at daybreak. The prophet came up in the morning, okay? And when they had a plague of darkness, no sun. So, we've just showed Yahweh's power over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 deities of Egypt. That's it. So when it says, you know, really, this is God's defeat of those Egyptian gods. Now, it doesn't mean a whole lot to us, but if you were Egyptian and you really prayed to a bull, or to a cobra, or to the sun, or worshiped the Nile, this is a demonstration. Your God is no God. So he's dealing with their idolatry, which had to be dealt with. And, you know, if you were raised in Egypt, you were told these fables and stories as a little boy and girl and believed them. You would need these plagues to set you free from that false belief system. And there it is. So the wisdom of God is seen in an incredible way in those 10 plagues. Now, let's see. Whoa. It's getting late. Take 10-minute break, and we'll look just quickly at the Red Sea crossing and then some review.